and I hope you all are ready to see some sword action as we will be manning the wonderful Sayuri, which allow me to give a quick introduction about this game for those joining us here on Contra Races that might not know about this very title. Hardcore Uprising is not only a prequel to Hardcore, which you had just seen Nintendo guy doing one segment ago, but it's also making it a prequel to the original Contra as well. And this came out within the 2010s as a digital exclusive release for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. The dev team behind this was the one and only Arc System Works, so you will be seeing some fantastic sprite work reminiscent of their early Guilty Gear works as well as their Blaze Blue games. It is a really, really fun time, and let me tell you, I think y'all are going to be impressed with some of the skill we're going to be seeing here. Now, just a quick reminder on a couple of things before we get started. First and foremost, because this is going to be a multi-elimination race, this four-way round between AntiAaron, Queen Bee 83, Kadroh, and SlurpeeNinja will be determined by which two out of four runners have the two highest times IGT-wise, at least if I'm not mistaken. And then we will have a second match that will pit the top two against each other, so you will be seeing this game showcased twice. And then, of course, we will be running on Rising mode, which, for those that don't know, is a little different from the arcade mode feature, in which all players are given the ability to fully upgrade their characters to the best of their ability, basically making this something of a safer category and one that almost equivalates to a New Game Plus. So it's with that in mind that you're going to see Sayuri here, one of the 3 DLC characters at her very best. And yeah, not much else to go over, so I think we're just about ready to get this race going. And I would like to also make mention that we have a few different platforms. I do recall hearing that Aaron here will be running on a Xbox 360, and then Kadroh will be doing a PS3 emulator, while QB and Slurpee are on the Xbox One. Now, this game does have main timing done by IGT, so trying to do the game within a full succession is very much a must, at least for a valid run anyway. But with that, we are off. Alright, here we go. And so, let's start off by explaining a few notable details about the gameplay itself. Starting with, similar to the Japanese version of Hardcore for the Genesis, characters are not given a one-shot you're dead spiel, but instead you have a proper health bar which gives you multiple hits until you then lose a life. Now, similar to normal Contra affair, if you do take a hit, you normally lose a power-up, but Sayuri here does not necessarily get that sort of thing. It's mostly based on attack ups as far as the whole shebang goes, but in terms of the gun power-ups, those do not really matter all that much. Now, it's with that in mind that not necessarily all, but just about a lot of upgrades have been purchased. Technically, all of them have been in the case of the Sayuri run, but if you were to look into the lab, which is a feature associated with the Rising mode, you would notice that some of the perks that you can purchase don't necessarily stack on top of each other. One would more or less override another. For instance, within the lives counter, you'll notice that each of our runners have a total of 30 lives, which is something that clearly is a reference to the good old Konami code associated with the Contra series. And in that case, that is the most expensive upgrade to purchase for just about any character. However, there are also individual live upgrades that you can get, in which you can up your total to at least 9. But overall, yeah, this is basically how it all plays out for the simple things of the upgrades. But first and foremost, we better go ahead and talk about the Lotus Worm, which will be our first major boss of the stage. So this guy has the main weak point being the upper body, but if you so need to, you can slash past the segments to get a few pickups and other sorts of nice little things, whether for score or for gun power-ups. But yeah, considering that Sayuri's blade is like a 1,000-degree hot knife through butter, you can absolutely slice through this fella, no problem. Hardly will get a chance to attack. It looks like QB is getting just a little bit of trouble, but luckily one of the nice things about Sayuri is that by holding the attack button, she can do a charge slash, which is reminiscent to the Gunner's heat plasma gun, which is one of many different options that are present in this game. And if you were to play as a gunner, you would also recognize some classics within this arsenal as well. But yeah, once the characters have grabbed onto the helicopter, that is the end of the first stage, and that'll be 1 out of 8. Now, you notice that this fella in the little drill mechanic thing, he's going in for a round 2, but there's not really much he can do about things. He does go into a phase 2 when he hits half health, and that's just one of those mandatory things where you can't damage him for a little bit, but that's not really much to worry about whatsoever. Now we're moving to stage 2, though, and just like with the first one, we have a classic Contra gate as well, which is obviously a reference to those sort of bosses seen in good old NES Contra and presumably the arcade one as well. Now, you'll notice that there's some special little actions that some of the runners are doing. You might have noticed Kadroh doing all these little hop over the enemies there. That's a little action ability and one of the other upgrades that you can purchase as well. There are multiple ones, and the game also counts how many times you do that at the end of a stage's results, which is really nice. The little Action Vault dodge ability grants you some invincibility until the end of the animation, which is absolutely helpful to have, and is mostly usable when your character is within the vicinity of an obstacle in which the game recognizes, oh hey, we can totally do that. Alright, so now we're moving to the first of the mini-bosses, and this fella right here is within a sort of 2-phase sort of thing, but the first phase is just so simple. It usually does a little bomb strafe from the upper and lower routes, but then once you get it down to 0 health, it'll then split into those 2 compartments in which you then have health bars for each, and then you just take those down, no big deal. Now those alligator robots, those crocodile robots, you do not want to get caught by those because they will drag you down, and that can mean instant death. But funnily enough, that's actually also where the highly recommended spot to grind for core points, which is what you use to purchase your upgrades, is. That little battlefield right there has it where those crocodile robots will constantly respawn, and so by using that to your advantage, you can use a powered charge slash to just keep striking them, or use the heated plasma gun and you will gain more and more core points, which is also multiplied based on your little combo meter percentage, which is also being shown under the health bar, which is what you might be seeing with, if you take a look with those green bars, which of course do go down in a sort of time limit manner when you see those just empty out and stuff. But yeah, let's quickly talk about Leviathan here. He's actually one of the playable DLC characters as well, but in the game himself, he commands these night mechs. So that was the Night Persia, and yeah, it just goes down very, very fast. no problem here, folks. Just some good old sword-on-sword action, except one is more superior. And I think we all know what that is. Anyway, moving into stage 3, this is actually a relatively short stage. There's not a whole lot of bosses. Particularly there are 2, and it's actually coming from the same boss, which will be the main boss of the level, which you will see very shortly on SlurpeeNinja's end. The enemies that look like those mechanical gorillas, though, with the stretchy, Luffy-like arms, they can be a bit annoying in that when you destroy them, once they explode, they cause chunks to go flying, and those will damage you. So, especially when you're using a gunner character, that can be really bad if those hit you, because then you'll potentially lose your power, which, to explain that, there is a power-up called Tough Guy. Does not necessarily apply to Sayuri here, but at the very least, it does make the game a little more manageable in that you will only lose your gun power-up if you get knocked down. In Sayuri's case, though, she is constantly within the blade itself, so nothing to really worry about here if our players do receive a bit of knockback. But Knockback does usually apply to taking damage when you're in fast movement, particularly within the air, or if you get hit by a heavy enough attack, such as SlurpeeNinja getting bonked by the boulder, as just a good example right there. And, ooh, unfortunately, taking a bit of damage from those spikes as well, which does, at least RTA-wise, put a little bit of an advantage into Kadroh. Oh, wow. Yeah, there was a bit of a quick shift between the two, yeah. But now if you will just turn your attention quickly to AntiAaron's side, there's the 573 Tigress, which that boss fight is pretty simple enough. You have the multi-layers of platforms, you have the hang below, you have the standard platforming in the mid, and then the hang ceiling up top, and they're just different attacks coming from the Tigress which just try to destroy platforming, or actually, no, not platforming, but necessarily the laser beams and stuff. They can be particularly annoying. Anyway, moving on, we now have the second portion of the fight itself going on. This, of course, being the... well, we're about to see a little transformation itself. A little Transformers-like animation in its own right. The Tigress suddenly transforms and rolls out into the Draconis. So this will be a water-based fight. Particularly speaking, the runners will have to manage the little raft platform that they initially stand on, but then they will have to stand on the bridge and try to strike the weak points and weaponry of the Draconis in order to then finish the fight. Which, if you do see the little jump prompt, it means that the Draconis is going to try and ram the raft platform, and you will want to let it just do that thing and then get on it and all that stuff. And then the fight also ends with a helicopter jump on, because the thing will start to self-destruct, and then, yeah, you gotta get off it by then. As simple as that. So now Kadroh is moving into what will be a auto-scroller level within the game, so there's not really going to be a whole lot to explain at current, at least until we get closer to the main boss of that particular portion. And so, for the time being, I do want to mention that the little waterfall fall is very likely a nod to the waterfall level within the original Contra, which, you know, it kind of checks out for me anyway. So, instead of climbing up one, you're just simply going down. And doesn't that make things a whole lot easier?
Stupendous.
But yeah, as Aaron clears stage 3, QB is now moving on to the Draconis fight as things go on and all that stuff. So, allow me to quickly mention the plot of this game. There is a governmental body within the year 2613, I believe it was. So that would make it the 27th century, and the Commonwealth government is absolutely not a popular one at that. So let's just say that a war hero by the name of Bahamut suddenly decides to head a resistance force in which all of the playable characters, Leviathan aside, happens to join and want to put it into the Commonwealth itself, which is led by Tiberius. And so, one of the weird things about all that is, having seen Hardcore, the Genesis game, you might be thinking to yourself, huh, doesn't that sound a little bit familiar to the name of the villain that we had seen Sheena let go at the end of that run? Well, the producers say that they could be related, they might not. It's not really set in stone. See, while Hardcore Uprising is an official prequel to Hardcore itself, the intent behind the game was to also start a franchise of its own, something which, of course, has not quite happened in time since, but it still at least left us with a pretty cool game, if I do say so myself. And so here we are, moving on to some more cars crashing into each other. Gosh, the Commonwealth sure does a horrible job trying to put together a task force when it comes to quite the case of road rage. Unfortunate. There's not really much else to go over, but I do believe there's a particular mini-boss which I will admit, my eyes were a little bit away from Kadroh and SlurpeeNinja's feeds, so I'm not necessarily sure if they took it on yet, but we will see soon enough. I imagine we have not quite done so, but all the same, I hope you're enjoying this run, because I gotta say, these 4 runners are just something else. I know I can definitely say I've seen Aaron and QB in action before, having even done commentary for QB's runs at a couple or a charity event. But then SlurpeeNinja, well, I can only say if it wasn't for Slurpee, I wouldn't have necessarily known about this game. So yeah, shout out to him. And then Kadroh, I wasn't quite familiar with at first, but yeah, no, I had a feeling that for these 4 players to be going against each other, yeah, this fella's skill is legit. Also, shout out to the Italian language. I happen to hail from a little bit of Italian myself, so I can very much respect that. Alright, so now we are moving on to that little infamous mini-boss within this stage, which all you need to do is just take down the weak points and hope that with enough damage you will be able to nail both phases before the boss starts to think of trying to go into the background and then causing debris to fall. If that were to happen, that would be an unfortunate time loss, and yeah, there's not really much you can do about that per se. But yeah, Kadroh and Slurpee doing just fine. We'll see how Aaron and QB fare very soon. For the time being, though, we will be seeing Kadroh and Slurpee coming up to the main boss of this stage, which is a particularly tough one, especially casually speaking, because now, instead of going on the road, you're going midair, and you're just going into shmup mode, which means now you can control in all 8 directions, and that can be a bit jarring at first. But the general gist of this big fella right here, the Lux Corona, is that we have multiple phases. It starts with the ring phase, which you're seeing our players try to hit these weak points from all around the ring to then open up the second layer, which only has a certain entry point, but then once you get into it and start taking care of the cannons, then it leads to our final phase, the robot phase. As you can see right here, this fella likes to throw in a hell of a lot of bullets, and so a bullet hell sort of approach seems very appropriate to call that sort of attack. But then we also have moves that involve the thing using its ring as a hitbox, which means you will want to try and keep your character within the gaps. You just got to look very closely in order to know where it is you need to stand and all that stuff. But once you take care of this guy's health, he goes down, and that's stage 4 complete. Nicely done on Kadroh's side. We'll be seeing Slurpee finish the Lux Corona very shortly. It looks like Aaron has just reached the boss. And QB... oh, so close. Almost gets the mini-boss kill. Unfortunately, it was just sitting on a pint of health, but at the very least, it'll guarantee that the next hit she gets in will indeed finish the thing off. And yes, it is very likely that the Lux Corona boss fight is a potential homage to Gradius, which would make sense considering, you know, Konami games do tend to reference one another. I'm sure we can all think of Zone of the Enders and the Vic Viper after all. But yeah, to now discuss the next stage that Kadroh and Slurpee are in, we got some stealth going on, and some very optional stealth at that. That's all going to be based on the detection area coming from the soldiers themselves, as well as these little spotlights in the stage. But really what they want to concern themselves with is just going fast and going through them, because really we don't got time to try and get around them. We really don't. Now we have the first little mini-boss here, which is another little 2-phaser thing. So once you deal enough damage to the iRobot as well as its guns, it will then break the floor and force you into a little fall section, which then brings you down to the ground, but not much else really to write home about. All right, QB has started the Lux Corona fight, and then we have a little lava plant or magma plant going on here, which Slurpee and Kadroh are perusing, as it were. And so we'll be coming up to a bit of an escort section very, very soon. And in fact, there we are right now. Ask and ye shall receive. One thing I do want to mention, though, is you do want to do your best not to break those glass containers open, because they can release a rather annoying enemy if given the chance to, you know, just wreck stuff, basically. But with that, we have now entered the escort mission, which here we have a young Dr. Geo Mandrake, yet another character that seems to have a relation to someone that we had seen within Hardcore Uprising. And this time, I'm willing to believe that this Geo Mandrake is the one and the same that eventually turned tail on the government and started using the alien cell's power for his experiments. Rather ironic, considering that, yeah, at first, here he is, you're trying to rescue him in order to then get some crucial information on taking care of the Commonwealth. And now here we have an alien in itself, which, you know, not necessarily the main theme behind this particular game. It's more based on trying to take care of an oppressive government organization in the Commonwealth itself and the Emperor Tiberius. But yeah, this thing might as well be the closest thing we got to an alien fight within this very game. And yeah, again, not much else to write home about here. Alright, and with Kadroh moving on to stage 6, we will have the second and last of the auto-scroller-based levels, in which you all saw the highway, but I got a good question for y'all. You like trains? I like trains. Let's go ride it. Let's go ride a train. And that's pretty much all there is. So, for the time being, we'll just go ahead commentate on our top 2 runners here. And so Aaron undergoing the escort mission, just trying to get the doctor to move, but it seems that he didn't necessarily cooperate. So the thing about the doctor's health bar is that you will notice a little red health bar above his position, in which if that goes down, he will technically die. It's not going to stop you dead in your tracks, though. It doesn't necessarily game over. Rather, you will see him undergo a bit of an animation, which does waste time, and then you'll lose a life as well. So luckily, it's not an insta-fail in the stage entirely, but it can be one of those annoying things in which, if it happens, it'll happen. All right, QB slicing her way through into the glass section and trying to, once again, avoid any of those eye robots from coming out. It seems a few of them decided to try and show up anyway, but no problem. She got past them and will be slashing her way through the escort section. So far, the doctor is behaving, gets a little bit of push damage, but hey, I like to call that a little love tap, a nudge in the right direction, all the same. All right, let's see how the rest of this goes. Meanwhile, in Slurpee and Kadroh's perspective, one thing you'll want to keep in mind about the trains is that each of the cars have a little health bar, and once those deplete, they will start to go red and then explode. The train will eventually replace the damaged car with a new one, though. So just as long as you have some ground to cover, it's not the worst of things, but enemy attacks can put a little pressure on that front, so being considerate of such, very much a must. Alright, QB is now going to be entering the main boss fight of Stage 5, that being the Celestial Imperator. And you noticed how those gun arms were what start off the fight. Looks like we got that little laser array going on. And so now she should be able to chop through the main guns. We got another laser array, but there we go. Gun arms down. There's one more layer, though, to chop through, and it looks like she might have actually taken care of one of the shoulders just as it was about to fly off, which does remove some of the clutter. Oh, wait, actually does not look like that's the case. No problem, though. The Celestial Imperator is now down, and QB will be moving on to Stage 6. Alright, so now to talk about the mid-boss of Stage 6, which we'll be seeing soon. Don't you all worry. But I hope we got some... Well, I hope we got some train fans here, because Kadroh had to take out those 3 guns, and that's that. But now, we'll be working our way up to the second mini-boss, and the one that can really put a cork in the casual experience here and there. It'll be just a bit, but don't you all worry, you'll understand how it's all going to play out. I'll give a little bit of a preemptive explanation, though. So, there are 2 phases within this boss. It'll start off in a weapon form, a little vehicle form, and then it will turn into a giant robot, which will then start to chase you and removes one of the train carts as well. And so he's only going to be vulnerable once the body comes into full view, which means that if he decides to suddenly run off, it can be a massive pain, and his attacks can also be hard to work with as well. But yeah, Kadroh taking care of the fight. Slurpee not too far behind, as it were. Now, one of the perks about this game being on the Xbox 360 is that, unlike the PS3, it is backwards compatible with future platforms as well. So, it is possible to not only play this on the 360, but also the Xbox One, which again is what QB and Slurpee are doing, but also the more recent Xbox Series XS, which is absolutely fantastic. I haven't necessarily seen if it does that little nice thing where it adds 60 frames per second to just about any game, which if you have not seen Sonic Unleashed on a Xbox Series X or S, you absolutely owe it to yourself to do so. But yeah, with that kind of processing power, you can only imagine the wonders that it can do for the load times in this game. Actually, that is one of the reasons, though, that Aaron is running on the 360. As some of you may know, he is a world record holder within quite a few of the hardcore Uprising categories. And yeah, he is opted to go with one of the older hardwares, just to give a bit of fairness for the sake of keeping us all within a similar viewing point, if you will. But yeah, after having just explained that, I did accidentally skip over the main boss of Stage 6, no problem though. Slurpee and Kadroh have entered Stage 7, so only one left after this. But now Aaron will enter the Mecha Boss. Now in Stage 7, we have made our way to the Commonwealth's main tower base, and whenever you have a tower, the most obvious thing to do is go up. And so what better than to charge our way in and raise some hell. We got some elevators here, but there will also be some vertical climb sections that will feature a few interesting things, let's just put it that way, such as missiles, which in this first portion of the level, it will see some missiles trying to destroy the elevators. Overall, it's just a simple game of going from one position to the next. But yeah, I'm going to quickly go over the Arachne fight, which Aaron has entered, with QB not too far behind. So at the moment, the Arachne fight is yet another vertical boss that has a couple of phases going, and overall, you will want to just stay attached to the train as best as you can. Knockdown damage is practically guaranteed, at least in situations like these. So you want to do your best to avoid things if possible, if you want to avoid losing lives. And nicely done on Aaron's side. And then QB taking care of the Mecha Boss fight. She will now be entering the Arachne fight as well. It is also something interesting to point out about what we're going to see in just a bit with Kadroh's side. Let's give it a moment. So you just saw him die right there. It wasn't quite it, but there we go. Second time's the charm. What exactly was going on there was, if he went a little bit further up... Ooh, that's a little unfortunate. So what Kadroh was trying to do was avoid any helicopter spawns, because helicopters are fairly bulky enemies, and as it would turn out, if you let your character die at a certain point within the climb, they automatically warp up, and to the point that they will go past the enemy trigger point for the helicopters. One helicopter, though, isn't all that bad. If anything, it's, as they say, better than nothing. It's not the worst bit of time lost, though, because with Sayuri's little upgrade to, or rather ability to do those charged slashes, it can make enemies like the choppers easy picking and all that jazz. So now we have a vertical climb, except it's with missiles. And oh, there's a little unexpected development there. SlurpeeNinja's controller temporarily disconnected. Hopefully we'll not have to see that happen again, but it could have very well just been a quick disconnect via randomness. Hopefully not the batteries. I know that feeling all too well. But yeah, quickly looking at that vertical climb in which Kadroh had just finished, you can climb past certain electrical gates just as long as they're a little bit further away from the wall. You don't have to worry about touching them, just climb past them, no invincibility needed. And now everything's on fire. This is fine. Folks, if you want to get your fire emotes going, or any this is fine stuff, this would be the perfect time to do so. And that man that we just saw speaking in a bit of an accent, that was Tiberius. He is the leader of the Commonwealth, and also Sayuri's adoptive father, so yeah, we have a bit of a enemy here for her that's a bit personal, per se. And yeah, not much else to explain except that with Kadroh and SlurpeeNinja, they are actually within the second Leviathan fight, which this is going to be the first phase. It's actually a bit of a chase sequence in which they just have to go through these hallways and eventually do some damage on Leviathan himself, who is not currently piloting a mecha. And then afterward, it'll be some platforming, except on umbrellas, because why the heck not? I'm not sure if this was actually a reference toward some other Konami title. I can't necessarily remember if Aaron once told me something about this, but all the same, with Kadroh having just caught up to Leviathan here, he is now within his second mech suit, this being the Knight Lunata, who carries a big as heck broadsword that can shoot fire at you, and he can use in a couple of different ways. Ultimately, you want to try and bust down this baddie as fast as you can before it gets a little out of control. Not much else to it. Alright, so as Aaron and QB are within their respective climbs, and SlurpeeNinja having just finished off the night, we now move on to a rather unfortunately designed boss in terms of giving players a bit of trouble, especially if you happen to be playing on a gunner. And that will be the rather oddly named Cerberus. This big fella right here has multiple heads, particularly 6. Not necessarily the traditional definition of a Cerberus, but hey, I guess it'll do. This thing, though, goes from side to side with these rather ugly-looking appendages, and the weak spot itself is the underbelly, in which this fella can go down and decide to sort of close access to the weak point or just make it harder to hit. But luckily, with the use of Sayuri's blade, it's just easy to take care of business, no problem. That's not really much else to say, because this thing doesn't get much of an opportunity to attack in the run, and that's all there is. Alright, now we're going to ride a missile off a chopper and onto the Commonwealth's battleship, which will be the final stage, Stage 8. It's going to start with yet another auto-scroller, where we are seeing Sayuri now board a similar hover bike as to the one from Stage 1. Meanwhile, Aaron is undergoing the Leviathan chase, QB not far behind. Now, those sniper enemies can be a bit of a pain. Those sniper bullets in particular are one of some attacks that can do quite a lot of damage to your health, especially take away one of your lives if you do not happen to have the maximized health bar. So those health upgrades really can and will come in handy. Other than that, though, once you've completed the first portion of Stage 8, it'll be time to move on to a bit of a gauntlet run. But, yeah, once more, let's get some, fire or this is fine emotes going, as QB's side very much is the last chance to do so, at least within this portion of the race. We still got one more match overall, of course. Something to mention about those gate enemies, those little portal shield enemies, is that if you shoot them enough times, they will then shoot back with a little bit of a charged refractor shot, I guess if you want to call it, really. And those fellas can be especially problematic if you let them be. And there are the two variants between the blue enemies and the red ones. Ooh, that was a very nice maneuver from Kadroh, though, making use of the double and triple jump, actually, to keep to the ceiling. Normally, the recommended way that the game encourages you to do in order to make that little platforming section is to ride a missile, but as proven, it is perfectly optional. And now for the Vitus engine. So, this is not the final boss of the stage itself. We've still got a few more fights to go after this, but the engine core itself features multiple phases. We just saw the first one go down. We have the second one, which is the separate orbs doing the respective laser attacks. Now we have a joint attack once again, except, you know, that just goes down once again. One more pair of separate attacks, and now it's on to the pillars, in which the player will have to destroy each and every one of them as they go up and down, effectively exposing, well, not up and down, but yeah, up to expose their weak points. And one thing to realize is that those dotted lines do give you an idea of the stage boundaries, meaning that if you go past them, it will not count as platforming, as we just saw right there in Kadroh's side. And then the final phase for the Vitus engine will have this thing going into a bit of a bowling ball. It'll go back and forth for each time you hit it, and then eventually it goes down. Now, Kadroh has to get the heck out of there. But it's not going to be that easy. I do want to point out that QB has entered the Cerberus fight. So now we're going to see one more chopped abomination of an enemy going down. Ooh, getting a little bit of damage pushed back, but no problem. Doesn't even get back up. It just falters to the might of Sayuri's swordsmanship. Alright, so Kadroh has entered Phase 1, already had entered Phase 1 of the Tiberius fight. Tiberius will indeed be our final boss. To explain how that phase goes on, as we see it now going on with Slurpee's side, he switches between two types of attacks. One being he will use these energy projectiles and just try to fire them, and then he has the fist lunge attacks, in which he'll either do it on the ground or do a leap in the air. And as you saw, he does swap between those. He can get interrupted from an attack if enough health gets lost. Other than that, though, he goes down pretty quickly, and so too will Tiberius Augustus, in which now he has mutated into a bit more of a proper Contra enemy, if you will. And how that fellow works is his stomp attacks can stun you. So if he does a stomp, you will want to be off the ground in order to avoid that. And then when the appendage goes into the wall, you can hang on it. He also has other attacks like creating those zombie clones of himself, but we're not really going to see much of that. We might see a bit of flamethrowing, but that's really all there is to it. And so now, one final phase to go. Kadroh and Slurpee are pretty close with one another. And now we are entering the Tiberius Invictus fight. So get ready for some constant platforming with a bottomless pit for a floor. The weak point is, of course, the chest piece, once it comes into view, that is, because if it's within a faraway view, then that simply means you cannot hit it. So when he comes in to do an attack like the one you saw on Kadroh's side, that is where you will want to dice away. Now, one really convenient thing about the way this fight is shaped is that within those falling helicopter bodies, destroying them will bring out these other power-ups, each of them containing a particular type, which is very helpful to keep in mind for gunner runs. But other than that, we are coming up on time for Kadroh, which will be once he latches onto the helicopter one final time. One thing that can bite about this final fight, though, is if you do happen to die and you run out of lives with this section, you got to start all the way from phase one again. It looks like Kadroh is having just a bit of trouble here, but that's time. There we go. GG's on Kadroh's side, who will be the first to finish RTA-wise. We'll just have to see what the final time IGT-wise is in just a second. And it is looking to be a 37:40. Nicely done. Meanwhile, that's time on Slurpee's side. And the final timing shall be 37:51. Not too bad. So we'll just have to see how it's all looking for QB and Aaron once that gets up to their sides as well. But yeah. You notice that when Kadroh did have a bit of trouble getting on the helicopter, he had to make sure that he grabbed onto it because the game will not give you any more freebies at that point. In comparison to the first levels, and the helicopter will be there, and if you just fall down from the bike section, you just, go back and automatically pop on there. But nope. The game wants you to do it for real here, and that's just all there is to it. Alright, Aaron is now in the Invictus fight. And QB will be on the final, or penultimate, phase of the engine. Let's see how it all goes. Alright, Aaron has just defeated Tiberius, just like that. Time for him will be very soon. And we will see how his IGT compares. In the meantime, QB is now within the final engine phase. And managed to get a few good hits on that. Absolutely wonderful there. Yep. That engine is a goner. Like that. That is time on Aaron's end. Final IGT is... If I'm looking at that correctly, we are looking at a 35-22, which definitely puts wow, just like that, yeah. So like I said, despite the loading times of each platform, IGT being the more accurate method allows for a much better understanding of how long each stage takes in the game's standards, and that right there is proof enough that just about anything can happen regardless of what platform you are using. All right, QB has taken care of Tiberius's first phase. We are now moving into the second one. Second verse, similar to the first as seen earlier. Not much else to explain. And by the way, I do want to give a quick shout out to the English dub voice cast of this game, which you can definitely tell they were going for a bit of a corny direction. Whether intentional or not, who knows? But I can say there's some pretty interesting choices here. All right. Augustus goes down. And now, Invictus time. All right, let's see how QB finishes strongly here because we got a bad guy that just does not want to give up. And so, all I can say is it's time to put an end to our adoptive father once and for all. Go, QB, finish strong. Use the power of thy blade to end his evil. In the meantime, we do have a quick confirmation from Slurpee that his final time was actually a few seconds off of his PB, which is very nuts. Definitely a good run, for sure. All right, QB taking down Invictus Tiberius. It's all coming down to the final chopper grab. So here we go. And time. Nicely done. And that's it. All four racers have finished. Folks, let's get some GGs going for each and every one of these wonderful people that have taken part in the first of our little two-stage event here. QB's final time, IGT wise, is 43:11. And so, our final standings of the four-way race is that our top two runners are AntiAaron and Kadroh. So you will be seeing these two face off against each other very, very soon. And I want to give a quick GG's to Slurpee and QB. Both performed very admirably and were able to handle the danger, and just getting to the end is always something very well worth commending and commemorating and all that good jazz. So shout out to all these four runners, and please give them a follow. Absolutely, please do so. Their respective Twitch links will be shared. And of course, with that, we still got one more race to go down. So as we get set up for that, take this time to get yourself a drink, maybe a snack, perhaps a little bit of food, whatever seems appropriate here. We will be back very, very shortly.
Warning. Warning. This will be telling.
西暦2636年、エイリアンの侵略が始まる。人類の未来をかけ、コントラが立ち上がる。戦いが今。スーパーファミコンアクションの頂点コントラスピリッツ。
Konami. Die Zukunft hat begonnen. Probotector bringt Farbe in deinen Gameboy. Probotector, der Actionknaller im Super NES. Tonnenweise Special Effects im Sega Mega Drive. Riesige Sprites. Probotector, himmlisch gut und höllisch schwer, urteilt die Fachpresse. Wert um 90% Spielspaß. Das ist Spitze. Probotector, Action und Spannung, fair in jedem Level. Weck die Power in dir. Probotector, der superstarke Videospielespaß.
Together. It's Konami's Contra Hardcore for Sega Genesis. Cool.
Need more firepower? Jump into Contra, Shattered Soldier. Blazing fast action, swarms of alien enemies, and all the firepower you need to get the job done. Contra, Shattered Soldier, rated T for Teen for PlayStation 2 and Game Boy Advance from Konami.
Three-way scroll. High position visual. Sound selective mode. It's a super AV action. Contra. ファミコン用カセットコントラ好評発売中。Konami.
All right, folks, welcome back to Hardcore Uprising. It is time, once again, for a race. Now, I will not be alone this time. For a little bit of background, we got Stormy over here. How are you doing, good sir?
Hey. Testing. I think I'm alive and well. I'm good. This is so awesome. This event has been killer so far. And I was kind of glad that you were like, hey, do you want to jump on with me? Because, it's like, yeah, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be a lot of fun. So, are you, go ahead. Did you want to say anything else before this second round?
Well, let's at least take the moment to reintroduce our current racers for anyone that just might have joined us. So, on the left side, we got AntiAaron, and on the right, Kadroh, who actually managed to get a PB with that race within what we just saw there, so big GG's to him on that. And with that in mind, we'll see what exactly happens this time. And so, before we get things started, this will be a PlayStation 3 versus a PlayStation 3 emulator. Aaron will be working the PS3 itself, with Kadroh working the emulator. Not much really else to be covered. Nothing that hasn't already been said within the previous startup. So, I think we're just about ready, and so are our runners. Let's get this race started.
I'll go count them down, and I'll be right back.
All right, folks. So, as we are getting right into that countdown, I do want to mention that we've got 8 stages total, and this will be conducted in Rising mode, which, in case you did not hear earlier, that is one of 2 modes aside the arcade mode, in which the big difference is you can collect core points within the game to then acquire some unlockable upgrades, which can really buff your character and make your gameplay go all the smoother and just absolutely make things just fly by the seat of your pants. It's absolutely wonderful and definitely a recommended mode. I will say that the amount of grinding put into this should not be understated, though, as even with the recommended grinding spot within stage 2, the amount of time it can take to get that many core points to get just about every upgrade you need to in one fell swoop, if you so choose to do it that way, can be quite a bit. I should know myself, having had to work out all the upgrades for Bahamut. And then as for the playable character, though, we are not seeing Bahamut or Crystal, who are the 2 that you would normally witness within the base game. Sayuri here is one of 3 playable characters that get added on through the DLC packs. This alongside in-game boss Leviathan and a certain fella who seems to be rocking some hella epic shades, as well as one heck of a pompadour. And I'd say he's kind of cool, just from what I've heard.
I've got a question about the characters, actually.
Absolutely, shoot.
We've been during the prep, we were talking a little bit about Gunner versus Blade and how it would be cool to see that category. But is Sayuri the only Blade character? And if not, then why aren't the other Blade characters as much of an advantage? Is it just the damage dealing thing?
Right. I do believe Sayuri is the only Blade character present, at least to my knowledge anyway. I don't believe that our pompadour fella happens to wield the same sort of weapon, as it were.
So Gunner versus Blade, would everybody be picking Bahamut, or is like what are the other gunners? What are their
Right.
advantages?
So Bahamut is a very well-rounded and maybe more offensive-based sort of gunner. Crystal is, at least in base value, 1 point of HP less, but is generally faster in terms of movement speed. So, to my understanding, I guess to each their own, but I do know that Bahamut is like the general gunner when it comes to that sort of spiel. Leviathan, unfortunately, is a much more difficult gunner character at that, lacking some of the upgrades, such as the tough guy one, which, as I had explained within the previous race, that is one of the ways that you can circumvent the take a hit, you lose a gun power-up, but it only applies to damage taken that does not result in a knockback. If it is a knockback, you will lose the gun in that slot. Other than that, though, aside from Leviathan not having that on his lab list of things to get, he also only has a singular space for a special gun power-up, so you can't even switch those out. And so that definitely would put him way out of the mix of a properly competitive gunner versus sword sort of spiel.
Thank you for such a wonderful answer, y'all. Let's get some major props in the chat for Steve for covering this for us. We've been trying to get this event going, like hardcore and hardcore uprising, together for over a year now, and what's mainly been holding us back is getting someone solid on comms. So not only did Steve like fill a gap, but he's like bringing like such a game to it that probably shouldn't even have told you all that, but it doesn't even like detract from the event at all. That like, you know, like it's so awesome that that you're doing such a good job. Also,
you're gonna make me blush.
Oh, good. Blush, man. You're doing great. While I'm here, yes, Gabriel, it is me. I'm Stormy. Hello. I was just kind of looking at the chat. I figured we could have some fun with these folks.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I was acknowledging.
Archie says you commentating is what we needed for this. Totally agree. Slormer says God tier. Funky says thanks, Steve. Gabriel says Steve with some really cute emojis. You're doing great, man. Thank you.
Making it stormy in the Tempest. I see what you did there.
Okay, so where are we at now here?
Right, so this is the mid-boss of the stage. So once again, it's a bit of a two-phaser. If you were to see the bomb strafe going off with the phase one thing, it's just super simple. It always repeats with a low strafe and then a high strafe. So low strafe goes right, the high strafe goes left. And that's just basically it. And then the duo phase, just, you know, one tries to go ahead and shoot some bullets, the other tries to grab something and yeets it across. Yeah, that's not much else to be said there.
Mega asked if this is Seth Rogen on comms. Mega thinks I sound like Seth Rogen. It's mainly in the laugh. I won't be able to do what I'm talking about unless you make me laugh. So if Steve is funny, maybe Mega will get to hear what she thinks is the Seth
hey,
Rogen
that kind of counts as something, doesn't it? Don't worry about it. Anyway, Night Persia, we already had Leviathan just show up. You know, the one thing that I haven't really gotten to check out with Leviathan's gameplay, because I will admit, some of the info I get offhand is some stuff provided from Aaron having done our first little commentary for Queen Bee, which I do believe that event in particular was, oh shoot, it's actually kind of escaping me. Oh, GG Speedruns' 4th anniversary, that's right. So some of the info I particularly got on Leviathan was definitely all thanks to Aaron, who is very much a runner that has made this game very much his own and then some. So yeah.
I completely equate Aaron and Hardcore Uprising together in my mind. It's just like they're synonymous with each other.
Absolutely.
If Hardcore Uprising has a Michael Jordan or a Babe Ruth, is it not Aaron?
I like the way you think. All right, so like I said earlier, these Stage 3 enemies, those little gorillas with the Luffy stretchy arms, they are not fun when they explode. Those chunks, they can damage you, and it does not feel good. All right, 573 Tigress. I did see mention that 573 is a bit of a common number within with Konami games. Fascinating on that one.
Also, chat, if you have any complaints about the stream, you can call 573 Tigress and leave a message for us, and we will be happy to. That was a terrible joke. Sorry.
Don't be surprised if the machine ends up on a beep, though, and then hangs up on you directly. All right. Oh, yeah, it is also worth mentioning, those tick enemies, you can just step on them, and you will absolutely just bust them down that way. They do, if they grab onto you, deal gradually draining health, but that's about it, really.
Talk to me about actual running speed of the different characters. Is there any, like, what's the main movement tech, if any, to optimize, or is it pretty straightforward with just go fast?
It is pretty straightforward, but one thing to keep in mind is that one of the big upgrades to have in Rising mode is the Ninja Jump, which within the Ascent, and only within the Ascent of the Jump, when this power-up is equipped, it gives you full-on invincibility. So that's how you're seeing Sayuri within both of our runners here, just phasing through these obstacles and not even getting hurt.
Plowing.
Yeah.
Plowing.
Absolutely. All right. Shoutouts to the waterfall drop. Yay!
Some of the moments in this game, with what I've played, kind of remind me of when you play like a Metroid, when you're at the end of the game and you're like the fully powered version of Samus, and and it feels like you get to play a Contra game with something like that. It's pretty fun.
I would not disagree with you there at all. I will say that one of the things that can definitely make you feel that way is if you especially know how to have those action ships going, which some can be a bit situational, admittedly. Some of the actions involved we really wouldn't necessarily see. There was the obstacle tackle, which usually applies to only the sandbags, but the nice thing about it is by doing that, it turns the sandbags into projectiles that can actually damage enemies, so that's always neat. It's not always going to give you an exact spread, as in sometimes enemies are just going to be in a different position, and you know what, that's just how it is. The usual launching of those sandbags are pretty much in given directions, though, so whenever you see them fly in those three directions, you can rest assured that's usually how it's going to be. All right, nicely done. These two have finished off the Draconis fight, and now we are moving on to stage 4. Excuse me there. I got a bit of a hiccup there. All right, so Central Highway. Now, I'm going to say this. I don't usually put this into account, but if I had to make a guess, I would imagine that Aaron is potentially within the lead. Remember, those load times are purely deceptive, especially with the way that we officially time this game. But I imagine if those two were very close to each other within the Draconis fight, then there is no question in my mind that Aaron must be going just a little bit faster. How much entirely, we'll have to see soon enough. But for the time being, actually, it is possible to see their total times as they are. So at the end of the level, while they do skip the results screen by default because they're trying to be courteous of like RTA and stuff, it is possible to get a good idea of how one runner is doing before we move on to the next level. So, yeah, keeping that in mind, yeah, I would definitely say Aaron currently has the advantage, but that, of course, can change. All right, now, though, Kadroh has entered that first little mini-boss fight. Little drill car just going bye-bye, and we jump right over it, no problem.
Are there any runners on the board who have essentially done their same route and same strats, but on different consoles to just simply compare what their run is like with that in-game versus real-time?
I would say more than likely with Aaron's case. I wouldn't know for sure about anybody else. I could potentially take a stab and say maybe our good friend the Phantomire, because he is also someone who has dabbled with this game. In fact, Slurpee and Phanto have found at least one or two strats that have been used by both of our runners. I do believe.
Oh, nice! Shoutouts to Phantomire and SlurpeeNinja. That's awesome. Good snag on that info, Steve. That's cool.
I definitely would say this is some of the stuff we've seen in Stage 7, if what I remember from Aaron is correct. All right. Other than that, though, you know, definitely a game that It's not necessarily out of discoveries. I do think Aaron may have found something a little bit more recently this year, in fact. So who knows what else we could see out of a little bag of tricks from this game if for us to take advantage of going faster. Anything can happen, I'd like to say. One thing I do gotta lament, though, is that with this game being exclusive, having launched originally on 7th generation consoles, it's such a dang shame that we do not have a Steam port or a Switch port for that matter. And I'm sure that if we did, it would still be on a decent level of performance, especially the Steam version, but like the Switch version too, I'm sure it could handle this game just fine. If there was ever one. So, hey, Arc System Works, if you are ever listening into any of these races and you happen to be hearing my voice, please reach out to Konami and consider doing this. I appreciate you very much putting in the rollback netcode for your current fighting games. Believe me, I'm sure the fighting game community would absolutely agree. But yo, you did good with Hardcore Uprising. I'd love to see a little more of a modern release. That
Jeremy,
said, though,
go ahead.
No, you first.
Jeremy in the chat says Aaron's been trying to find more strats too. I've been watching many hours and running this game this year. Aaron streams this game so consistently that I can almost like when I'm talking about this game, I mainly just pull up Twitch and assume that he's on so I can show it to whoever I'm talking to. More times than not, that's been how I've shown this game to people. Is because I know that Aaron is live and I can just go to Twitch.
Yeah.
So if anybody watching happens to be liking what they're seeing, and you want to watch a lot of Hardcore Uprising content, all of our runners tonight are worth follow. Queen Bee streams this game just as much as Aaron does. The two of them are always on. The two of them race each other very often. Shout outs to all of our racers, and if you're liking what you're seeing, I would recommend giving them a follow because we got some plenty more content that they will be putting onto the internet of this game in the future.
Absolutely. And I know that Queen Bee will be showcasing this game and this category for some events to come within the new year, so definitely be on the lookout for that. She also recently had the chance to show this off for the Lady Arcaders' own speedrun event called Girls Go Fast. So if you definitely want to check out the VOD, then yeah, absolutely.
I was up at like 2 or 3 in the morning my time to watch that. I was like, let's do this, bring it on.
I wish I was able to compensate for that, but sadly sleep overtook me and there's just no way I could make that work. But all is well. It was absolutely an understandable reason. Now,
Archie says he wants a gunner race. I would love a gunner race, Archie.
Oh yeah, gunner. I will say I am going to try and run this game myself, and gunner will be the first thing I go for because
is that your category of choice? Why do you pick gunner?
Because right now I haven't got any of the DLC packs yet, and it's with Bahamut and Crystal obviously being the base game. It just seemed like a no-brainer and a good way to really get to know the know on Hardcore Uprising. Now, Sayuri would definitely be a very much beginner-friendly Rising mode category, all things considered, because if you're looking at this, you can see why, and there would be no questions asked. But
yeah, I also own this game and have not yet purchased the DLC.
One of the good things, though, is that with the Xbox Store, you can at the very least guarantee that there will be those DLCs available, because Microsoft is usually good about keeping their content up. The only thing that usually has things go down is if it's the decision of a developer. So, for instance, when EA decided it was time to retire Titanfall 1, especially with the little situation going on with those servers, so they felt the best way to handle that was to no longer provide access to the game digitally, and they were already well moving on with Titanfall 2 and Apex Legends as it was, so I think that was the right call. Of course, you can still access that game if you happen to have the physical version for the consoles, or even still happen to have the Steam version before it went down. But yeah, aside from that though, you can absolutely guarantee that the DLC and the game will be on the Xbox market, no problems asked. The PS3
And
one is
DLC
still very...
works with the physical copy just as well as the digital copy. That's not an exclusive thing to the digital only version.
Actually, I don't know if this ever had a physical copy. I don't imagine so. It's,
okay.
After all, it was Konami Digital Entertainment. But
Yeah. You're right. It was digital only.
All right, I'm gonna let you handle these ones because because I think you all know. I think you all know that it's time for some fire.
Let's get the flame emojis in the chat. I'm gonna paste a whole bunch of them here. Spam it. Sound the alarm.
This place suits.
Yeah,
Yes.
This is looking fantastic.
I mean, it's not the fire from the tower stage, but it's close enough. I mean, it's a magma plant. What can I tell you? All right.
Major Metroid Dread vibes too. This part. There's another little
True. I can see
Metroid
that.
comparison that my game can't help make, or my mind can't help make between the two games.
Oh,
I compare
absolutely.
Contra and Metroid a lot. There's a lot of similarities.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we have the Geomandrake escort mission. And so as it were beforehand, all the runners need to do is get way ahead of the dock in order to get him all the way up there and stuff. It should be no problem otherwise, but trying to get the enemies cleared and out of the way to... Oh no! Oh shoot, Kadroh getting a little bit of a unlucky jump off the stairs backward animation there. That's definitely going to lose him a little bit of time. Yeah, needless to say, escort missions in a Contra game seem a little counterintuitive, especially for going fast, and yeah, this is exactly why. And it's no wonder that this fella purportedly turns out to be the villain of the hardcore that everyone grew up with back in the 90s.
That was Mandrake, right?
That was Mandrake. Mandrake.
So I also I'm pretty sure that according to Contra lore, he also designed some of the weapons that I, a Contra 3 runner, use. He designed like some of the tech that Contra 3 that was used in the Alien Wars, which is Contra 3.
That actually makes a lot of sense when you think about that. Yeah. That's the thing. Here, obviously, he was intent on breaking from the Commonwealth, and so that's why we had to rescue him. But then you also think about the fact that, yeah, the enemy faction in hardcore had General Bahamut, and we don't necessarily know if it's the exact same individual as the Bahamut within this game. Why did they
do that? I've always wondered that. It's like you read about it and like it commonly says like, but the publishers won't clarify if it's the same character or not. It's like you picked such a specific name. Just make it canon. What's the deal? I mean, it is canon in my mind, but like, I don't know why there is a blurred line about it. Do you have any insight into that?
No, but I imagine it had something to do with the fact that they did intend this to be its own franchise as well. So it's like, it's Contra, yes, but they also clearly intended to make more games. And because that didn't really happen, who knows what's to say, but I could still see if...
So it might have been to avoid like publishing rights or something to say it was a different character.
Maybe.
I see.
Because the way this game was sort of marketed is... Actually, I'm going to have to look back at the store pages to really know that for sure. But not really much else I can clarify, as it were. Oh, that is actually one of the nice things about Sayuri now that I think about it. So those flamethrower enemies have a bulk of health. You can try and gun them down, but chances are in this stage you will not likely do so unless you have a very busted weapon. Which
so
even
gunners are dodging this part.
Well, yes, yes, and in case you didn't know, it's all you really need to do is just drop down through the platform and then cling on the railings, which, you know, even without the ninja jump. Oh my god, ninja dump.
Clip it.
I guess we could. Oh no. Whoa. Now. Okay. Hey, hear me out. Contra raises emote. Ninja dumpy. It sounds so wrong and yet it sounds so right. Oh yeah. I can imagine that.
Jeremy says it sounds like Steve is challenging you to kill those flamethrower enemies with his mash. Jeremy's got a wicked mash. Thinks he can handle it as a gunner.
I think so too. That's the thing, though. I forgot to mention that there is an automatic fire power up within Rising mode that is absolutely one of the things that we also use here. So the auto fire does allow for some of the rapid slashing, shooting, and all that stuff. You know, it's a bit of a no-brainer to have. Although I am also made aware that for optimal grinding in the Stage 2 mid-boss fight arena, which, again, that's using the charge wave as Sayuri to take out those crocs and keep doing so, rinse and repeat. And then if you were to use a gunner, that would be heat plasma, which you can do it however you so choose. Like, you can use the range attack from any character and they'll all still share the core points, but then that's also one of the downsides about the lab is that they each have different buy sets, so you still have to get core points in order to be able to unlock different characters' different abilities, and that can be a bit of a hassle. I know I'll say this, I am a Devil May Cry runner, and I know within the community one of the daunting things about well, maybe not necessarily daunting, but one of the things you got to keep in mind within DMC 4, or not 4, 5, is each character has their own different buys. So yeah, I think you get what I'm going with. So resource management, yeah, basically.
Just as a traditional Contra runner, it's just something that's so outside the norm, but you know, still like cool, like you know, like it's awesome. Game fits very well within the being Contra, but something fresh and new.
Right. All right. So, not really much left within the game, as it were. And
Haunting Dante. Sorry.
Is true. No, it's no problem. Let me think about this next one.
Marty, we were saying that earlier. A Steam release of this game is so, yeah, it would be
very much appreciated. I mean, if you had to think about it, I could see it happening within a secondary Contra collection. Take all of the stuff that hasn't been put into the first one, including, and hear me out, Rebirth. You got to throw in Rebirth as well.
Oh, well, I'll hear you hat on that. We love Rebirth over here, man. Rebirth is so criminally inaccessible right now, and I would love to be able to play that game at you know, just as easily as I can play some of the other Contras. It's so cool and underrated.
Oh yeah.
Archie says Rebirth also needs release. Totally, Rebirth is a must. Says Jeremy. We love Rebirth.
All Rebirths need release. I mean, hey, M2 did some of the anniversary collections. Why not
Are you able to race Rebirth? Should we get that going with you too?
Oh, can't say I'm much of a player on that one, but I have it on my console.
Could you do comms?
Maybe I could see.
Confirmed. Call the presses.
Well, hey, at the very least. Yeah, no, I was gonna bring up the Castlevania one. That's probably the coolest one among the three because, I know that Gradius is a close resemblance to the original, and that's all fine and dandy. It's like, it has some of the nice little extra bells and whistles, like shoot the core and all that stuff that you see or hear in later stuff. But then, oh man, Castlevania, The Adventure Rebirth. It's not a remake of the first Castlevania. It's a remake of the first Game Boy Castlevania game. And while they did not throw in that soundtrack as the remix, they still have had some amazing covers of Castlevania tunes, familiar and then some.
Marty says that the Castlevania Rebirth is his favorite by a long shot as well.
Oh, I see. If you're going to see me do a Rebirth run, that's probably going to be the first I do. And I know I have good reason for wanting to do that. But
Gabriel says they should put Rebitch in a collection. I want to try it. I went ahead and intentionally said the typo because I think it's very funny. He meant Rebirth, but
of course.
Thank you for that, Gabriel. Thank you.
Oh.
Clip it.
Well, hey, that's 2. Count them 2.
2. You bring me on, and the bloopers just ooze.
All right. I will say though, in case you're curious about the different rising upgrades. We can just quickly filter through that. There's the action ships, which, again, there's 6 of them, or no, 5 of them, and the results screen will also show you how many times you've done that, assuming that you have not game overed anywhere, or rather ran out of lives anyway by the time you completed the level. There's the amount of maximum lives that you can increase, or sorry, yeah, maximum health points, but also, yes, maximum lives. And the one that especially comes into play is the Uprising R, which is what gives both of these fellas 30. Obviously, another call out to the Konami code, a very loving reference. Then there's also stuff like Speed Boost, Speed Run, Speed King, Speed Queen. This can increase your movement speed, your dashing speed, your wall climbing, hanging, all that stuff. There's extra air boosts. Normally you only get 1 air boost, but now you can do 2. Double jumping, I do believe, is a given within the game initially, so the air jump plus 1 would therefore give you a triple jump. And I already did mention the ninja jump as well. For the gunners, there's instantly giving the gun power-ups their higher level versions, and there's even giving the laser or ripple gun within the empty slots when you start a level.
Look at that gorgeous background. This is seriously just a pretty game. I'm sorry to cut you off, but
no
Aaron,
worries.
That city landscape. We see city landscapes in several other Contra games.
Yes.
And that, like, you know, this game's version of that is just a sight to behold. Here comes some missile riding, which is another thing that we're familiar with as Contra fans.
I was just gonna say, it's all thanks to Arc System Works. They just make some beautiful stuff, and yeah, enough said, really. Oh man, makes me hungry for more. Also, just making me hungry in general. I kind of hope we go fast a little bit sooner. I'm pretty sure I just heard some eggplant coming. Oh man. Well, no worries. We'll see how it all plays out, because this is the 7th stage. Only 1 left to go. So, you know.
Jeremy says he just had strawberry cupcakes. How much hungrier does that make you? Is that worse?
I'm fine. It's just a later
fine.
dinner. It's a later dinner. What can I tell you?
Okay.
I should mention that Sayuri does have a few unique upgrades, particularly the Samurai Action Speed Charge, and then the Blade Attack buffs, which, yeah, that pretty much speaks for themselves. Other than that, the gunners have the ones focused around the different gun modes, and that's really about it. So, Jeremy
asks what you're having for dinner. Is it eggplant? Is that what you said?
Yeah, it is eggplant rollatini, but also eggplant parmigiana. It's just like a little something shared, really.
Oh, fantastic.
Well, hey, you can't have good food without a fire, and everything's on fire once again.
I was going to say, imagine cooking that lasagna over this very flame.
Everything's on fire, and this is fine. But yeah, Leviathan here. We're just gonna say no.
No.
Gotta admit, that backflip animation though. Oh, Aaron just going, like, decimating those first few platforms and just using raw skill alone.
Aaron's hungry too. He's like, I'm out of here. Let's finish this.
I'm sure he already ate. And you know what? It all checks out, really. All right, Night Lunat. Well, give it a moment. I'll remember.
Lunata.
There we go. Yeah, I like the boss queue theme for the boss nameplates of the main ones. It's just a little short and simple, dramatic cue.
Yeah, it's awesome. Funky says Aaron probably both cooked and ate dinner during this race.
Doubtful, but hey, that'd be a cool feat.
Very nice.
All right.
Very nice.
Moving up to the Cerberus fight. So, once again, there's a weak point on the bottom, and this boss can be pretty annoying to deal with on other modes. This poor ugly fella just is not gonna have a good time with Sayuri. And that's all that really needs to be said. So let's see how it goes with each of our runners, who, by the way, are indeed neck and neck RTA-wise. So, big shout-outs there.
You know what this fight reminds me of? When you get the one of the blue orbs in Contra 3, and the walker legs come down, and you gotta like dance underneath them. Very, very reminiscent shape, where it's like these like a parabola of legs, and the hitbox is the boss's like core at the top of you.
Wouldn't say I'm the most familiar, but I can definitely understand that. All right, let's take a look at the timing so far.
A true warrior.
All right, Aaron currently sitting at a 29-12, and Kadroh at a 30-51, if I read that correctly.
Still pretty tight.
Yeah, I would agree. And it all comes down to the battleships. Once again, we got an auto-scroller.
Unforgivable.
And,
Now's a good time for donations. Oh, this is.
oh, I wish. You have no idea how I knew. Okay, I already know that I should be avoiding that, but, like, it is tempting. It is tempting. All right. Anyway, just doing some dodging. Actually, it is well worth pointing out that as far as I can see, Aaron is still sitting on 30 lives. I'm pretty sure he must have done the little death warp to avoid the helicopters. I would hope so anyway. And then it's likely that he might have picked up a couple of one-ups along the way. It's not necessary, obviously, but within the game, there are these collectible one-ups that can be hidden. In fact, there are a few hidden items out there, and it's also worth mentioning that if you like completion categories, we actually have a little something for that, particularly in the starred ships. Within each of the 8 levels, there is a hidden starred ship, and once you collect it for the first time in your file, the game will actually tell you you've had the starred ship. Of course, if you are doing consecutive runs after that, you'll still see the starred ship there and stuff, but you know, basically collect each of them, complete the stages. It's pretty straightforward as that.
Chat is confirming Aaron was up to 32 lives at one point and did do death warps.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, cool.
We have $22 from G Guy saying my donation goes to save the animals. Thank you, G Guy.
I mean, hey, I'm all about saving animals. What can I say? All right, we are nearing the end of this show, and well, it's been a fun run, but all good things must come to an end. Just like the evil at hand.
Let's fight some bosses, baby. Some dad bosses.
Vitus Engine. Here we go.
Oh, this isn't the dad yet. The dad's next, right?
Yeah. We'll get to Tiberius.
We'll get to daddy.
Yes. You know, the thing about the game itself is that when you look into the loading screens and you'll notice these little written passages, those explain like what's going on at that point in the story for each character too. So definitely one of those things that you can look at if you're so curious and all that. But not really much else to say here. There's just, you know, rinse and repeat, take out the orbs, then take out the pillars. Aaron very much cutting through them as it is.
Music is dope. Bring that up.
That's true. That is true. You know, I guess this is also one of the unfortunate things about this not having a Steam release, because then we could totally purchase that digitally. But then again, you know what? Hang on, give me a second here.
Archie's noticing out or pointing out the difference between the colors on the two captures there.
It almost seems as though there is the Konami Kukieha Club on Spotify having made a full-on album with the soundtrack.
Fantastic. Link it.
I'll
Can
see
you
what I-
can you drop it in the chat?
Yeah, give me a second.
Good
Absolutely.
snag. I'm
I just-
so glad we brought you on board, man.
I mean, it's not usually like me to just up and do that mid-run commentary. It really isn't, but what can I say?
We're not affiliate yet, so I don't have to clear any official like
Right.
promotions with Spotify.
Well,
Drop a link as fans, right? We can do that.
Why not? Well, hey, as we close things off, it is Augustus time, and
Augustus Group.
just get rid of him. Down. Something to mention is that the game doesn't have where he goes into a bit of a stagger animation when his health does run out, and then you got to hit him one more time after the animation is done in order to then change things up. It's just like an actual, thing within the game. But then, of course, he's not quite dead just yet. In fact, he changes even further to go beyond his level of mutation and enters Tiberius Invictus. Here we go. Second time around seeing this boss within tonight's event. All it comes down to is striking the chest as many times as you can once it comes into view. Of course, when you see him in the far zone, that is not going to count. Here we go. Aaron getting the first chance he gets and just takes it downtown to Pain Street. And there we go.
Well done, Steve. Well done.
It was all
Boom!
impromptu.
There goes the dynamite.
And Kadroh as well. All right, both runners are coming up to that final helicopter grab. I personally want to see Kadroh get it first shot, and if he does, that should be a PB. Here we go. Time on Aaron.
Mission clear.
Looked like a 39-12, or the timer didn't quite stop, so it looked like a 39.
Yeah, I was having a little trouble. No worries.
I think I saw 39-12 or 13.
That's a 30, and IGT wise, 35-12. And then
Sick.
Kadroh's got time as well. Congrats to both runners. Kadroh's final time is 37-21. If that's not another PB, I don't know what is.
What two PBs in a race event? Oh my
Could it be?
god!
We'll have to see what Kadroh says, because I don't know for sure.
Oh, okay.
Well, then again, because in order for Kadroh to have gotten that final time the first time around, that's a PB. All right, well, let's wrap this up. GG's to Aaron, our winner, and GG's to Kadroh, our second place participant. And yeah, that was absolutely a sight to behold, and we here hope you all enjoy it as well. Please follow these two folks and give them as much support as you can by many means. This is yeah, and if you would like to get this game yourself, remember it is available on PS3 and the Xbox systems as well. And definitely be on the lookout for the Xbox stuff. I managed to get my game while there was a sale going on, so you never know. You never know. But with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead, get me some food. And Stormy, I think I will give the rest of the reins to you as well. But thank you all for having me.
Thank you so much, Steve. You did phenomenal. Enjoy your eggplant. I'll go tell the racers personally GG's in a second, but before that, I wanted to tell the viewers GG's for hanging out with us tonight and watching such an awesome event. This whole since October or November, when we started this current season of races, has started awesome and has continued to build and build and build to like a better event every time. And it is the last event of the year, but it's not the last event of the season. We've got stuff that we're trying to pull off for January, at least 2 events. February is the 35th anniversary of NES Contra, the NES release of the first Contra. We're going to be doing an event on speed gaming. We have 2 hours. I would love to get as many of us who are down to race some NES Contra involved. I'll definitely be, if you're in the Contra Discord already, I'll be hitting everybody up. If you are watching this and racing Contra of any kind is something that you would like to get involved with, please message me, join the Discord, message any of us. Any of the mods on this channel will help you. We would love to, keep this community growing because it's been extremely rewarding and extremely fun for the entire time that it's been around, and it just keeps getting cooler and cooler. Huge shout outs tonight to Dan, Combustible Dan, for running our stream. Him and Mimixer put a lot of work into making those transitions and these background screens just like super pop. Everything about tonight's production just really drove home like how cool this channel has been getting. So I just want to say huge shout outs to Dan, put in a lot of time. Huge shout outs to Mimixer, put in some great work. We also have a fun little recap video that we're gonna show that the mixer doesn't want me to tell you that he put together, but give him some GGs for what we're about to watch. I don't think we have anything else planned for the night, so I'm gonna say thank you so much, everybody. Again, thanks to Dan for running the stuff. Thanks to Steve. Thank you so much to Mr. K and Super High Nintendo Guy for bringing hardcore to the show. And it's always a pleasure to have Mr. K on and lend some insight with the comms. Tonight was really kick-ass, guys. Tonight was awesome, and I just want to thank everybody who was involved and everybody who was watching. And I probably said thank you too many times. So, all right, y'all, we're off. We're gonna watch this cool little video that Mix made, and we'll see you in January for the next event. Talk to you soon. Later.